Let's get started with our first news. Recently, Javier Mendez shared his thoughts on Morab's showboating after his fight with Umar Nurmagomedov. Mendez strongly believes that Morab's behavior played a significant role in securing his victory. According to Mendez, judges take into account a fighter's demeanor and body language at the end of a fight, which can greatly impact how they score the contest. He emphasized how these seemingly minor details can make a huge difference in close rounds. What Mendez and his team did with Omar, he explained, was work on him after each round to raise his head and act like the winner. You have to act like the winner, Mendez said. You cannot pretend like you won that round but have your head down. This might sound like a small detail, but it has the potential to affect the judge's perception. Judges, whether consciously or not, pay attention to a fighter's body language, and this can influence how they score a fight. When a fighter appears down or exhausted with their head low, it sends a signal of defeat even if they've technically won the round. On the other hand, if a fighter walks around confidently, as if they are in control, it can subconsciously sway the judges to score in their favor. In a close round, every detail counts. If one fighter looks drained and defeated, while the other is standing tall, confidently moving around the ring, the judges may lean toward the more energetic and composed fighter. This subtle difference can make the difference in how rounds are scored, especially when there's no clear dominant winner. Mendez highlights that this isn't just about performance during the round itself, but also how a fighter carries themselves after the bell rings. Judges are under a tremendous amount of pressure to make the right decision, and once they submit their scorecard, it's final. This makes it even more important for fighters to manage their image and body language throughout the fight, as it could influence the judge's decision. Mendez pointed out that the psychological aspect of fighting, including how a fighter presents themselves, should not be underestimated. A fighter's mental toughness and their ability to maintain confidence, even when exhausted, can leave a lasting impression on the judges, potentially affecting the outcome of a fight. Mendez made it clear that he isn't trying to hide his bias when it comes to Morab. Am I being biased? Of course I'm being biased. That's my guy, he said, acknowledging that his views are shaped by his personal connection to Morab. But Mendez also emphasized that he's not making excuses for Morab's performance. He firmly believes that Morab's approach to his fights, including his confidence and demeanor, played a critical role in securing his victory, and he's not afraid to admit that. In summary, Mendez's comments bring attention to the psychological and strategic aspects of MMA that often go unnoticed. While physical performance is obviously key to winning a fight, how a fighter presents themselves to the judges can also play a pivotal role. Morab's ability to maintain a winning attitude even when the fight was close shows how important it is to keep up appearances both inside and outside the octagon. The psychological game is just as vital as the physical one, and it seems like Morab has mastered it. Moving on to our second piece of news, Big John McCarthy recently fired back at Arman Sukian for turning down a fight with Mateusz Gamrot. Serukian had previously revealed that the UFC had offered him a matchup with the lower-ranked Gamrot, but he felt that it was disrespectful, especially considering his position in the lightweight division. McCarthy, however, didn't hold back in his response, arguing that Serukian is in no position to be picky given his circumstances in the UFC. McCarthy pointed out that Serukian had already caused the UFC major headaches in the past, particularly when he pulled out of the highly anticipated Islam Makhachev rematch. This was a fight that had massive title implications, and Serukian's withdrawal disrupted one of the biggest matchups of the year. For McCarthy, this was a significant point of contention. He felt that Serukian had already complicated matchmaking for the UFC, and by refusing the Gamrot fight, Serukian was further hurting the promotion and damaging his own momentum in the process. Arman's refusal might be tied to rankings and timing, McCarthy said, acknowledging that there could be legitimate reasons for Serukian's hesitations. However, he was clear that the UFC as a promotion expects fighters to cooperate rather than complicate matchmaking. McCarthy's message was that after backing out of a major fight like the Makhachev rematch, Serukian shouldn't be in a position where he can afford to turn down fights based on rankings alone. He stressed that, as a fighter in a competitive division, sometimes it's necessary to take fights that might not seem ideal, but could offer important opportunities in the long run. McCarthy also reminded fans and fighters alike that Serukian had already lost to Gamrot in a previous encounter. This fact, McCarthy argued, made the potential rematch with Gamrot more sensible than it might appear at first glance when only considering the rankings. A fighter's past performances and their journey within the division can often provide more context than a simple ranking might suggest. chest. For McCarthy, this meant that Serukian turning down the fight was not only an opportunity missed for himself, but also an obstacle for the UFC, which was trying to make the best matchups for the fans and for the growth of the division. McCarthy's stance is rooted in his experience as both a commentator and a former referee. He understands the pressure the UFC faces when trying to maintain the flow of matchups in a division as stacked as the lightweight division. He argued that as much as a fighter's record matters, their ability to navigate the politics and dynamics of matchmaking also plays a significant role in their success in the promotion. Turning down fights, especially when the UFC is trying to create interesting and marketable matchups, could create unnecessary complications as it disrupts the promotion's ability to move forward with exciting matchups for fans to enjoy. In his closing remarks, McCarthy invited his audience to weigh in on the situation, saying, "What do you think about this situation? Leave your comments below." This comment not only encouraged engagement, but also emphasized the divisiveness of the topic. It's clear that some fans and analysts may agree with McCarthy's perspective that Serukian should have taken the fight with Gamrot, while others may empathize with the fighter's desire for respect and better matchmaking. Ultimately, McCarthy's comments shed light on a larger issue within the UFC, the balancing act between fighter expectations, promotion goals, and maintaining momentum in a fast-paced and ever-evolving sport. In conclusion, Big John McCarthy's comments on Arman Sukian's decision to turn down the fight with Mateusz Gamrot have sparked a larger conversation about the pressures fighters face within the UFC. While Serukian's concerns about rankings and respect are understandable, McCarthy's perspective highlights the importance of cooperation with the promotion, especially after a major setback like the Makhachev rematch withdrawal. By turning down the Gamrot fight, Serukian might be complicating not just his own career, but also the UFC's efforts to keep the lightweight division moving forward. Chael Sonnen recently made a bold prediction regarding Khamzat Chimaev's undefeated streak, suggesting that Dricus Du Plessis could be the one to hand Chimaev his first loss. In a YouTube video, Sonnen shared his thoughts on why he believes Du Plessis has the tools and mentality to defeat one of the UFC's most dominant fighters. Sonnen highlighted that Du Plessis' fighting style may seem awkward or unorthodox, but he thrives in chaotic situations where most fighters struggle. Du Plessis doesn't slow down, doesn't gas out, and applies relentless pressure. This unique ability to drag opponents into deep waters has been key to his success, and he often finds ways to overwhelm top-level fighters in the later rounds. In contrast, Chimaev is known for his explosive, fast-paced fighting style, especially in the first round. He overwhelms his opponents early with aggressive striking and powerful takedowns, building momentum from the start. Most of his opponents are unable to recover, succumbing to his speed and strength. However, Sonnen believes Du Plessis has the grit and stamina to survive Chimaev's initial onslaught and turn the tide as the fight progresses. If this fight gets past round 2, the momentum could shift fast. Sonnen remarked. He explained that while Chimaev's high-intensity pace works in his favor early, in a 5-round fight, things could change. As Chimaev's energy starts to fade, Du Plessis' relentless style and superior conditioning could give him the advantage. Sonnen speculated that Du Plessis' ability to endure and keep the pressure on could force Chimaev into uncharted territory, where his gas tank might be tested. Sonnen admitted that he wasn't always so confident in Du Plessis' chances against Chimaev. A year ago, or even 6 months ago, Sonnen would have dismissed Du Plessis as a serious threat to Chimaev. He assumed Chimaev would win every round and continue his path of dominance. However, after witnessing Du Plessis' recent performances against high-level opponents, Sonnen has had a change of heart. He now believes that Du Plessis' heart, durability, and fighting spirit could pose a significant challenge to Chimaev. "I didn't feel this way a year ago or even 6 months ago," Sonnen admitted, "but now I'm seeing what other people are seeing, and if that fight happens, we'll do an actual breakdown and prediction." This statement reflects how quickly fighters can evolve and shift public perception, especially when they're able to prove themselves against tough competition. In conclusion, Chael Sonnen's prediction that Dricus Du Plessis could hand Khamzat Chimaev his first loss is a bold one, but it's grounded in the belief that Du Plessis' ability to thrive in chaotic situations and his superior conditioning could be the key to outlasting Chimaev's early onslaught. As Sonnen's opinion has evolved, it shows how unpredictable the UFC landscape can be. If this fight happens, it's sure to be an exciting and unpredictable contest, with both fighters bringing unique styles to the octagon. The MMA community has been buzzing with reactions after Arman Sukian's recent comments regarding a potential fight with Mateusz Gamrot. Serukian claimed that the UFC had offered him what he considered a disrespectful matchup against the lower-ranked Gamrot, a fight he turned down. This sparked a flurry of opinions from fans, analysts, and fellow fighters, all weighing in on whether Serukian's decision was justified or if it was a misstep in his career. One fan quickly pointed out that Serukian had been offered a prime opportunity to headline a main event in a region where he would have significant support. The fans' criticism was clear. They offered you a main event in a region where you would be supported, and you turned it down. That easily moves Ilya ahead of you. The fan was referring to Ilya Topuria, a rising star who has been climbing the ranks and appears to be positioned for a potential title shot. By turning down the fight with Gamrot, Serukian could be seen as distancing himself from a key opportunity to solidify his place in the title picture, especially when a win would have brought him closer to a future title shot. Others within the community saw Serukian's comments as part of a broader strategic mistake. "This is chess," one analyst remarked, suggesting that Serukian's refusal to fight Gamrot could set him back in the rankings. They explained that Serukian might now have to fight one or two more times before being considered for title contention. With these comments, he's making things harder for himself, the analyst added, emphasizing how a fighter's decisions can have long-term consequences in the highly competitive world of the UFC. On the other hand, some fans rallied behind Serukian, expressing sympathy for his situation. Several pointed out that Serukian had not been forthcoming about the full extent of his injury, which some felt contributed to his decision to decline the fight. The UFC's expectation of fighters to always be available for matchmaking, no matter the circumstances, has been a point of contention for many fighters over the years, with Serukian's situation serving as another example of this tension. In this light, some fans argued that Serukian was being unfairly treated by the UFC, who they believed might be more focused on booking the most marketable fights than considering a fighter's personal and physical limitations. The debate became more polarized as some continued to criticize Serukian for not taking the fight and risking his shot at the title. Had Serukian taken the fight and won, he would have been back in title contention, one fan argued, stating that turning down the fight with Gamrot might have cost him the momentum he needed to push forward in the division. They believe that fighters need to seize every opportunity they're given, especially when it could potentially bring them one step closer to a championship. In contrast, others supported Serukian's stance, saying that he should have the right to decline a matchup that he feels disrespects his standing in the rankings. They noted that the UFC sometimes offers fights that seem unbalanced or strategically disadvantageous for higher-ranked fighters, which can leave them in difficult positions when deciding to accept or reject those offers. By refusing the fight, Serukian was, in their view, standing firm in his belief that he deserves more respect from the promotion. Ultimately, the MMA community remains divided on Serukian's comments and his decision to turn down the fight with Gamrot. While some argue that he missed a crucial opportunity to regain momentum and push for a title shot, others sympathize with his reasoning, whether it be based on an injury or a perceived lack of respect from the UFC. What is clear, however, is that Serukian's future in the UFC now hinges on his ability to regain momentum and prove himself again in the octagon, with many fans and analysts closely watching how his career will unfold following this controversial decision. And now, onto the next major headline. Belal Muhammad has finally broken his silence on the ongoing tension between him and Khamzat Chimaev. The two fighters have been exchanging trash talk online in recent weeks, fueling speculation of a potential clash. However, ahead of UFC 315 and Muhammad's upcoming bout against Jack Della Maddalena, the reigning welterweight champion has made it clear there's no personal grudge between him and Chimaev. In his recent interviews, Muhammad emphasized that his back and forth with Chimaev isn't about hate or rivalry, it's about competition. He reiterated his long-stated intention to move up to middleweight, which seems to have triggered Chimaev to fire back online. Responding with a subtle jab, Chimaev questioned Muhammad's motives and implied he was chasing attention. But instead of backing down, Muhammad doubled down on his goal to compete at 185 pounds and prove himself across divisions. In fact, Muhammad went a step further to show his seriousness. He posted a photo of himself wearing a t-shirt boldly printed with Muhammad versus Chimaev, symbolizing that he's not just talking, he's ready to fight. This sparked even more buzz among fans who have long wanted to see the two gritty, high-level fighters clash in the octagon. When asked about Chimaev during an interview with Brian Campbell, Muhammad had a calm yet confident response. "I want to fight the best guys in the world," he said. "When he was at 170, I was asking for him. I wanted to fight him. It wasn't personal. It was about challenging myself. I want to show you guys that I'm the best guy in the UFC right now. My name needs to be at the top of that list." It's clear that for Muhammad, this isn't about ego, it's about legacy. Despite all the hype, a fight between Muhammad and Chimaev doesn't seem imminent. Muhammad has yet to defend his welterweight title, and his performance at UFC 315 will heavily influence his next steps. Even if he wins, it's unlikely the UFC will immediately grant him a shot at middleweight, especially considering the number of rising contenders in the 170-pound division: Shavkat Rakhmonov, Ian Machado Gary, and Sean Brady, to name a few. On the other hand, Chimaev is still navigating the middleweight ladder and has yet to face the current champion, Dricus Du Plessis. That fight must happen before any potential showdown with Muhammad is seriously discussed. Still, the possibility remains open, and the anticipation continues to grow. So, what do you think? Could Belal Muhammad truly compete at middleweight? Would he stand a chance against Chimaev if the two ever collide? And who should be next for both men if they stay in their current divisions? That wraps up the latest in MMA and boxing news. Share your thoughts. Do you side with Muhammad's confident outlook, or do you think Chimaev still poses the biggest threat in both divisions? Let us know in the comments.